For most of human history, meat came from animals, but that is quietly changing. In labs around the world, including companies approved to sell food in Canada, meat is now being grown without farms, without slaughter, and without animals in the traditional sense. Some say it's the future of food. Others say we're moving too fast. So, what exactly is lab-grown meat? Is it safe? And will Canadians be eating it, whether they realize it or not? Most people assume meat is simple. An animal is raised, it's processed. It ends up in a store or restaurant. When people hear lab-grown meat, they imagine something experimental, futuristic, or years away, something optional. But the reality is more complex. This technology already exists. It's already approved in some countries, and it's being positioned as a solution to global food challenges. Lab-grown meat is real meat. It's not plant-based. It's not a soy substitute. It starts with real animal cells. Scientists take a small sample of cells from an animal, usually muscle cells, and place them into a controlled environment. Those cells are fed nutrients, oxygen, and growth signals. Over time, they multiply. Eventually, they form tissue that is biologically similar to traditional meat. No farms, no pastures, no slaughter. Just cells, growing inside industrial equipment. Here's the simplified version. First, cells are collected from an animal. Next, those cells are placed inside large containers called bioreactors. Inside these tanks, the cells are fed a growth medium, a liquid containing nutrients and compounds that encourage growth. As the cells multiply, they form muscle tissue. That tissue is then harvested, shaped, and processed into products like burgers, nuggets, or ground meat. This process is highly controlled, sterile, and engineered. It looks less like a farm and more like a pharmaceutical factory. This is where many people are surprised. Lab-grown meat has already been approved for sale in countries like Singapore and the United States. In Canada, regulatory agencies are actively evaluating similar products. Health authorities don't approve food based on whether it feels natural. They approve it based on safety data, composition, and manufacturing standards. That means approval does not equal long-term certainty. It means current evidence meets existing requirements. This technology didn't appear by accident. It emerged because multiple pressures collided at the same time. First, population growth. As the global population increases, demand for protein rises. Traditional meat production requires land, water, feed, and energy, all at massive scale. Second, environmental pressure. Governments, investors, and corporations face pressure to reduce emissions, land use, and water consumption. These pressures shape funding decisions. Third, technology. Cell culture science already existed for medicine and pharmaceuticals. Food companies adapted these systems for protein production. Lab-grown meat isn't a grassroots movement. It's a top-down technological response to global constraints. Before lab-grown meat ever becomes a normal option on store shelves, it will likely enter our food system quietly. Not as a headline product, not as a steak labeled "grown in a lab," but mixed into foods people already eat every day. Processed foods are the easiest entry point. Ground meat, nuggets, patties, sausages, frozen meals. These products don't rely on texture or structure the way whole cuts of meat do. That makes them easier to manufacture, easier to scale, and easier to introduce without drawing attention. Most consumers don't evaluate food emotionally at the ingredient level. They evaluate it by price, taste, and convenience. When food looks familiar, people assume it is familiar, and that's how food systems change. Not suddenly, but gradually. Another thing to understand is that lab-grown meat is not being designed primarily for individual consumers. It's being designed for systems. Large food suppliers, institutional buyers, export markets, governments planning long-term food security. When policymakers talk about feeding future populations, they don't start with grocery stores. They start with scale, consistency, predictability. Lab-grown meat offers something traditional farming struggles with: control. It can be produced year-round. It doesn't depend on weather. It doesn't require grazing land. And it can be located close to population centers. From a systems perspective, that's powerful. But from a consumer perspective, it raises questions. Because food optimized for systems doesn't always prioritize transparency. There's also a perception gap. Many people believe lab-grown meat is being created because people asked for it. That's not exactly true. Most consumers didn't request this technology. It emerged from scientific capability, investment opportunity, and policy pressure. Once something becomes technically possible, industries ask a different question. Not, should we, but how fast can this be scaled? This is how many technologies enter daily life. Not through public demand, but through efficiency. And once efficiency becomes the priority, adoption usually follows, whether consumers are ready or not. Another important factor is cost. Not today, but tomorrow. Right now, lab-grown meat is expensive, very expensive, but that doesn't mean it will stay that way. Technology follows a pattern. Early versions are costly and limited. Then, production improves. Processes are optimized. Costs fall. This has happened with electronics, renewable energy, pharmaceuticals. Food is no different. The goal is not to make lab-grown meat a premium product. The goal is to make it competitive, or cheaper, than traditional meat. Once price parity is reached, adoption accelerates quickly, because at that point, cost becomes the deciding factor. This shift also changes who controls food production. Traditional meat relies on farmers, ranchers, feed suppliers, transport networks, and regional ecosystems. Lab-grown meat relies on laboratories, patents, intellectual property, and centralized facilities. That doesn't mean one system is automatically better, but they are fundamentally different. One distributes production across many independent players. The other concentrates it. And history shows that when production becomes concentrated, power follows. Pricing power, supply decisions, influence over regulation. These are not hypothetical concerns. They are structural realities. This is why discussions about lab-grown meat often feel polarized. Supporters focus on efficiency, sustainability, and innovation. Critics focus on control, transparency, and long-term effects. Both perspectives exist because this technology sits at the intersection of food, science, and economics. And food is never just food. It's culture, it's identity, it's trust. Once trust is lost in a food system, it is extremely difficult to rebuild, which is why awareness matters more than opinion. This isn't just about meat. It's about how food systems change. Every major shift in food production creates winners and losers. Lab-grown meat may solve some problems, but it also introduces new questions about transparency, control, and long-term impact. The issue isn't fear, it's awareness. Lab-grown meat may not replace traditional meat tomorrow, but it is closer than most people realize. If you value understanding what's changing in the food system before it reaches your plate, this channel is for you. Subscribe to Consumer Watch Canada